Time now to grab a few words with head coach Kent Kessinger as we get ready for the first game of the spring season, as Ottawa University will be at home at Advent Health Field to take on the Sterling Warriors. And Coach, thank you for taking time out of a busy practice week.
You're welcome, Bob. It's good to be with you.
I'm sure the last couple of weeks have been a lot better to practice than maybe the early part of February with all the cold and the snow.
Yeah, definitely. We've had some better weather, and then the fact that we are getting ramped up to play a game that usually helps kind of get through the mundane aspects of practice. So our guys, even though it's been some early mornings and some late evenings, they've done a really good job, I think, of adapting and getting excited about this weekend.
It's really I'm happy to see that as you get ready that you do have a lot of returning starters, not a whole lot of changes either way when it comes to this team. So you're going to have a team that's that's going to be very knowledgeable about what's going to be done. Plus, they've had a lot of time to reflect from the fall season.
Yeah, it's nice, going into I guess the spring season, having guys that already know your stuff, particularly since we got stuck indoors for about a week and a half with practices because of the cold snap that hit us. But once we were able to get outside, you had guys like offensively like Dylan Foose and Greg McMahon in the tight end and the receiving core that really started, kind of helping out the other guys. Had in offensive line, we got Arnold Mendoza and those guys that, that played, and Jordan Hobson that played all in the fall. That was good. Defensively, we got probably most of our leaders when it comes to captains and that sort of thing are on the defensive side. So having those guys really, I think, made a difference in us being able to prepare. And then, quarterbacking wise, having guys that have taken some snaps for us, it's a lot different than starting off the regular season like we did, back in August.
The only change on the offensive line is Tony Iono, who is the right guard listed as the starter for Saturday from America Samoa. Give us a little bit of background on him.
Tony actually came here last spring, and so he got a whopping 3 practices, kind of like Bailey Shire did before we had to close everything down. So he was here in the spring. Generally, one of the things that we have to battle is with transfers is making sure that they had enough hours, and he was about an hour short when he came in the fall. So we were going to put him through the red shirt, and then everybody's red shirted at this point this year. So we got enough hours for him. He did well in the fall semester to where he's good to go for us here in the spring. We also have another offensive lineman that's going to play quite a bit, Jamie Saldivar, who is also another big eater, and he came in the fall and through transfer and everything wasn't able to play for us in the fall, but we've got those guys going for us. So we've added some depth, and that both of them had played at junior college, so they had experience. So I'm pretty excited to watch Tony and Jamie out there added into the offensive line that played, I think fairly well for us in the fall.
I think one of the big questions for this offense is going to be at quarterback. Bailey Shire listed as the starter, and then backing him up is Eugene Santerling. We saw Eugene start the season, then we've seen kind of a mixture between Bailey, Eugene, and even some Colton Davis. What was it that you saw out of Bailey during this practice session that gave him the nod to be the starter?
Well, Bailey's been the most consistent, and then a couple weeks ago, Eugene had an ankle injury, so he was out for a week, and so kind of sidelined him a little bit. So put him behind the learning curve, or the refreshing curve, I should say, what we're trying to do here in the spring. But I'm hoping that you'll actually see all of our quarterbacks. We have 5 quarterbacks right now in the program. We're planning on getting them all during this springtime. Some good quality reps in games. We're kind of taking a little different approach, and we're looking at it both offensively and defensively, is that that this is a competitive season. So our, short-term goals are every week, with the games, but where our long-term goal is to actually prepare us for the fall, which a normal spring football would be. And so we're kind of looking at it as being a little bit of a dual goal set for us. So we're going to try to get as many players as we can to play, knowing that that we want to be able to get them good live reps so we can use that as evaluation and then also as teaching for the fall. So it's a little different. I'm not usually a person that says that, it's winning and losing is the end all be all. But here, particularly in the spring, we're trying to do two things: not only be successful now, but we want to prepare for the fall, because I think that we've got some pretty talented guys on our team, even some that are still learning, that can really help us be in a tremendous football team in the fall of 21.
How much growth have you seen out of the quarterbacks from the fall to now? Have you seen some growth? Have you seen the growth? And what kind of changes have you seen?
I think that there's a much better understanding of what we're doing, particularly Bailey and Eugene, who, got quite a bit of reps, just straight at quarterback. We're trying to keep Colton out at receiver. We think that he's one of our better receivers. Dakota Lind, who is a freshman, is going to see some playing time, as well as Keegan and Caleb. Both those guys are going to see some time as we go through. But it's been a really nice kind of competition. The guys, you're going to get better when you can compete. And we've had a pretty nice competition going on. And we're just going to keep it going for the next, what do we got, 4 or 5 weeks to be able to hopefully squeeze a couple games in.
One point of excitement is James Reeder making a return after his injury and poised to maybe get some time during the spring portion of the season. How excited are you to see him back?
Oh, it's been great to have James back. He was an all-conference kid his first year. His second year, he kind of had that sophomore slump, and then he was looking absolutely wonderful coming into fall camp of what would have been his junior year, and then he tore his ACL. So it's one of those things that was right at the beginning, in the end of July-ish, where he did it. And it usually takes a year, and it was a full year. So, even going in August, August, September, he was still not at 100%, but now he's basically had, anywhere from a year to year and a half of rehabilitation on it. Looks really good in practice. He's put on some good weight too in that time, so he's even more physical of a runner. So it's been great to have him. Plus, he's one of those guys. He didn't skip a beat when from playing. He actually knows probably more now. So it was a good learning experience for him to go through the fall.
When was his last carry? If you wouldn't mind reminding us all.
A couple of years ago was his last official carry. So he didn't do anything in this fall, and he was, to start off with, what we had in 20. And so in 2019, he was out. So his last carry would have been in 2018, season 2018.
Okay. So almost, 2.5 years basically then, in a sense.
Yeah, when you count the fact that, we normally play in the fall. Yeah.
So the opponent coming up here on Saturday is Sterling, and they are a young team that have had some struggles, struggled last week in their game against Kansas Wesleyan. But they do have some good young talent out there, including especially in the safety position.
Yeah, their entire secondary is freshmen. They have some different guys listed in their 2 deep than they did in the fall, but so do we. It's just kind of par for the course when you're playing a fall sport in the spring, where you're not usually used to doing that. But they have a couple guys that had played return. Their linebackers are the same starting linebackers. D-line is pretty much intact from what they had. So defense has always been one of their MOs to be really successful at Sterling. So we expect a lot of pressure. They played a lot of man in the fall, but they didn't do so much when they were going here to start off against Kansas Westland. So it'll be interesting to see what we actually get. But they do have some good youth. They've got some good solid guys on offense, and they run a very good scheme that fits them, that they can be repetitive, and they do a really good job. Usually, Chase does a good job. The head football coach, Coach Hansen, does a really good job of window dressing some of the plays to make it look a little different, but then have the same similar blocking scheme. So they can be really consistent with that.
Of course, some of the same players that we've come to see over the last few years. But what is the difference this year with this year's Sterling's team as opposed to ones in the years past?
Well, their quarterback got injured, fairly early last year, and so was kind of out. So that made a difference. And I think that with their youthfulness, they're going through some growing pains in the fall. But usually what I tell guys is you make it through your first season, you're no longer a freshman, now you're a sophomore. So even though these guys are listed in their 2 deep as freshmen, you got to think experience wise, they've already got pretty much a full season in.
What have you seen as you've prepared for this team this week that you feel like you can take advantage of?
Well, I think that what's tough about it is we just have to figure out what we're good at right now here in the spring. We had what we were good at in the fall, which was some of that was obviously, running the football, because we felt that we were pretty solid with our guys, up front. I think we might have one of the better offensive lineman groups that we've had, in a long time, particularly, adding in Jamie and Tony to have a little bit more, older depth to add to some of those young guys that, that really came on, like Trevor Concher, who's, basically started every game for us at center, all but one. And with that, so, I think that that's been a strength for us right now, is that, our line has really picked up on the stuff. Now we got to see if we can put it all together. I mean, we've been playing against each other. We, haven't done a whole lot of, tackling to the ground. We haven't had a chance to really scrimmage, with officials. So it's going to be one of those kind of guessing games to find out that what we're going to be good at and kind of establish identity as we go through the game. And that'll be our job as coaches to make sure that we, figure out what our identity is, play a little bit off the fall, but see what we're doing a little bit new.
Defensively for Ottawa University, what do you expect to see them face from Sterling? Are we looking at a triple option threat? Are we looking at the standard back in the pocket quarterback type play? What can they expect to see?
Well, they don't run like a wildcat offense, but they have a lot of quarterback built in, run and reads. They use a lot of, quick fly motion, jet sweep type things with the receivers that are pretty good at that. They run some power, and they'll run power off of the jet sweep. They'll run quarterback power. They'll run some counter plays. In pass game wise, they set up the play action pretty good. And that's where we're going to have to be disciplined in the secondary to be able to stay on our reads and read the reads, because they've had a tendency to have some pretty quick guys at receiver that can, go get the ball. And so, I think that what we're going to do is we're going to see a very similar offense that you've seen in the last couple of years. So jet sweeps, quarterback power read, some off tackle type running plays, play action pass. And then it looks like they've sprinkled in a little bit more short game and screen game, which is what we kind of looked at as in the first 5 games of the season, or I think it's 5 games that they played, or maybe it's 6 of the season. But that's kind of what we're expecting from them. And as usual, Sterling players, they play hard all the time. So offense, defense, special teams, they play hard.
What part of coming up on Saturday, and it's either with the Sterling team, the game itself, concerns you?
That's a good question. Well, first of all, it can, want to make sure that the weather's halfway decent. The weather concerns me, right, Bob? Windy, rainy, cold. I think we're gonna, unfortunately, we might get the trifecta on that. So that is a concern. It's going to be our senior day, and I want, a concern is that we play well. It's our opening game, and we're going to have senior day at the same time because our thoughts were, this would be our second game, so we kind of planned it as being we had already have broken in, what we need to do, and it wouldn't be our first game, and we could have at least our first start at trying to have a senior day, not knowing what COVID was going to do to us and everything. So it looks like we're going to be able to pull that off, but have a good game for these seniors to recognize them. So I think more of my anxiousness, I think, is directed toward, just getting this game going and getting it off. Not so much, what's going to happen in the game, because, for us, it's like a first game of the year again. You're going to go in with a whole lot of unknown, and hopefully you find out a whole lot about yourself as you go through the game.
What excites you the most?
What excites me the most, just to kind of see some of these new guys out here, playing for us, and some of the guys that were freshmen that had been making, some significant impacts in our offense and defense and special teams to play a little bit. I also want to see some of the new guys that we got that came in. I want to see what they're like, when we're out there and, and the bullets are flying for real, type deal. I mean, that's what kind of excites me. It's different, it has been really different. It's got a different feel to it, getting prepared for a game in spring. It's an odd feeling, for sure. But I'm looking at the positives of it. That what excites me is that we get 45 or 50 practices to prepare us for the fall, as opposed to 15. Instead of one scrimmage against ourselves, we've got the potential now we got 4 other games that we can play, and plus maybe a scrimmage. I mean, we might be able to drop in there with Baker. So we'll see. That's a lot more competitive opportunities for us. And I think our kids rather play the game than just talk about it.
Well, Coach, I appreciate you taking time out. It's been a busy week, I'm sure, and it's going to be exciting to see some Braves football during this time of the year. Of course, we will talk with head coach Kent Kessinger as part of our Ottawa University Braves pregame show on Saturday, which will start at noon. Kickoff will follow at 1 o'clock. You'll be able to hear the game on 1220 and 103.7 FM KOFO, KOFO.com. You can find it on YouTube. Just look for KOFO Radio. And you can also go to OttawaBraves.com. Coach, thanks for taking time out. We'll talk to you on Saturday.
I'm looking forward to see you on Saturday, Bob.